Joining me for a podcast extra is Allen Weiss. He is a certified and licensed athletic trainer, and he also has a master's degree in physical therapy.
Correct.
And this is his physical therapy business. He is co-owner of Preferred Physical Therapy. We are here in the Fleming Island area of Clay County.
Yes.
And I've got questions for you.
Fire away.
That are supposed to be some of the most common ailments, and hopefully you can give people information that they can take home.
Yes, absolutely. Make life easier. Yes, absolutely. 100%.
But I want to ask about you. How long have you been doing this?
So I've worked my entire career in Clay County. Graduated from PT school in December of '96. Started working in January of '97 and been here ever since. Been blessed to meet my partner and get together with him business-wise and open up this office 19 years ago. So,
19 years.
Yes, yeah, it's been a blessing after blessing, I can tell you that.
And has this always been what you wanted to do? Like, is this your joy?
So this is definitely my joy. You know, don't get me wrong, I do not like some of it. I do not like QuickBooks and different things. I don't like paying the bills. I enjoy patient care. I love being out here. Certainly most passionate about the high school age athlete as far as patient care goes. But for me, I'm definitely in my world.
You told me this was not your original plan.
No, definitely not my original plan. I was, a junior at Florida State University, going Oles, but I was getting ready to take the MCAT, and when I started to look at all of the schooling that I had left and realizing that I'd be in my mid to late 30s before I'd really get to decide where I wanted to be and how I wanted to do things, I just volunteered at a physical therapy clinic, got a part-time job there, and from there I knew that this is what I wanted to do.
So what was your path? Your path, you were going to be?
I was going to try to be an orthopedic surgeon. That was definitely the plan for me,
And why? And so, but this you just fell in love with?
Yes,
How?
100%. When you volunteer at a clinic and you see those clinicians working, and then I was there so much they asked me if I wanted a job, and so then I got to really kind of help them take care of people and watch the progress that they get to make on a weekly basis. I knew that this was for me.
Now, see, this is why I want to talk to you, because you love this.
I do.
Love helping people. So we're going to talk about injuries.
Okay, fire away.
And I want to talk about preventing injuries when exercising. People, especially first of the year, they're gung-ho, they want to get in the gym.
Yes.
And how... It's a broad question.
Yes.
But how do you prevent injuries?
So, generally speaking, movement is key. In our world, just so many occupations are sedentary, where we work remotely, we don't even have to leave the house sometimes, and so it's just so important you have to schedule this. You can't, it can't be, I'll get to this if I have time. It has to be on your books, and you have to work, even if it's just as simple as walking. Walking is probably the most underrated form of exercise, and one of our favorite terms here is motion is lotion. That's how everything, when we use the parts, that's how they all get lubricated, and the oil changes happen. So that's what you want.
I like to run. Well, I don't like to run. I do it.
Okay.
Because there's benefits.
It's a great calorie burner. Yes.
But if I'm hurting or something's going on and I have to walk, I don't feel like I'm actually doing anything. Do you burn calories? Do you actually work your joints? What does walking do? So
walking it's multifaceted. You definitely burn calories. If you were to come to me and say, what should I make sure I do on a daily basis, I would tell you, make sure you get 8,000 steps a day.
8,000?
Yes, and if you've never done that, if you're severely deconditioned, start with 3,000, and then make it 3,500, but that, starting somewhere and having a goal in a world where almost everybody's got an Apple Watch or something that counts their steps for them, that is definitely where you should start. It's, again, it doesn't, you need a pair of shoes. That's all you need. It doesn't cost you anything, and it's super, super important.
So if I start at 3,000 steps, how do those increments go to increase?
So I tell everybody 10% a week. Don't do more than 10% a week. You can't be in a hurry. You want, when you get in a hurry, you hurt something, and then that gives you the reason to not do it anymore. You know, you want to have a relationship with this or have it in your schedule where it gets to the point where once you start to see the results and see how your body feels, that motivates you to keep going. You know, the hard part is getting started and then staying in it without being injured. You know, so be very deliberate about how you progress and have a plan for this. And if you're not comfortable making a plan, that's when you ask for help. You know, ask for help. For
okay,
sure.
now you said something just a moment ago about, you know, us as a whole being so sedentary and working from home or working at an office at a desk. So some people like to sit, some people have desks where they can stand, which are kind of cool.
I definitely recommend those, yes.
But are there specific ways to strengthen, just be able to do that all day?
So certainly, yeah. I mean, if you have to work at a desk, you know, I usually tell everybody, you know, definitely, you know, don't get a drink and go to the bathroom in the same trip. I tell you, split those up, you know, so that it gives you a reason to leave your desk. So you're trying to get up every 45 minutes to an hour for sure. And then ergonomically speaking, if you're going to work at a desk, you definitely want to be in a situation where your feet are on the floor. And I tell everybody you want right angles at your knees and your hips, and preferably a drawer with your keyboard that comes out and a little thing for your mouse so that you are here, your elbows are at your side and you're not on top of the desk here, because once you go from here to here, all the stress goes there. You know, so you just have to ergonomically have to make sure your elbows could be at your side, you have the mouse here, and the monitor is right in front of you. No, I've seen so many cases where they're like this and then the monitor's over here for some reason because they got something else here. You know, you definitely want to pay attention. If you're going to spend hours a day at something, you want to make sure you're set up for success, for sure.
Okay, and all of that just puts everything in alignment.
Everything in perfect alignment and minimizes the stress. It's still not great to sit for 8 hours a day, but again, if you're in an occupation that requires that, and like I said, split up your breaks as best you can and make sure you have the equipment and the setup necessary to be successful.
So, okay, I'm at work, I sit all day, I am going to get up. What do I do? Just walk around the building?
Yes, again, steps are good. You know, that's what I said. Don't break your, don't go to the bathroom and get a drink at the same time. Like I said, give yourself a reason to get up again later. And, you know, you can even do, you know, and meeting with many, you know, doctors' office staff and things like that, they ask for similar things like that. I tell them, I said, look, every time you go to the bathroom during the day, you need to do 5 air squats, you know, before you go. So you stand up from your chair, you know, you're here, you just squat, air squat, 5 squats. And if you do that 5 times a day, all of a sudden that's 25 squats you did, and plus all of your steps and everything like that.
Wow.
It's very simple. It takes 10 seconds.
And those are things that I don't think about that. You know, I got to go. I just get up, come back.
No, I know. You know, and when your mind gets close, like I said, you have to make it a priority. You know, you can't treat your wellness as something that you'll get to later because, you know, you and I both know later usually doesn't come. You know, we're all busy.
Goodness.
So.
And that brings up another question. You know, say you are doing exercising because you've hurt yourself and you have to go see a physical therapist. You start feeling better.
That's great.
So,
that means we did our job.
Yeah, but you told me I should continue doing these for another few months at home,
Yes.
but I feel fine. Do I really, should I keep doing those exercises? Should I constantly have them in my war chest to go
it
to?
is human nature to let it, you know, let things slide as we feel better. You know, even I'm guilty. You know, we're all guilty of that. And again, you have to prioritize your wellness. You know, so if you know that the weak link in your chain is a low back problem, then you should have a low back maintenance plan that you keep up with 100%. You know, or if for you as a runner, if you're constantly battling, you know, Achilles tendonitis or something like that, you should have a plan for your calves, you know, to make sure that, you know, that stays in the rearview mirror as much as possible, especially at times where you're ramping up your running. Maybe you're trying to get ready for a marathon or a half marathon, things like that, where your mileage goes up. That's tended to be where the problems pop up.
Okay,
So.
or not, because I only do 3 miles. I like marathons.
You're a 5K-er.
Yeah.
Got it.
But, and you also used as an example lower back.
Yes.
Is that a big deal? Do you see that a lot?
That's, you know, for the over 40 population, I think the stat is something in the neighborhood of 50% of the people over 40 have missed 1 day of work because of a back problem.
Wow.
So it's really, it is a big deal, and it's definitely something people should pay attention to, especially with their work ergonomics, like we talked about earlier. And you know, for me, flexibility is key. You know, that's definitely somebody that should be stretching their hamstrings. They should be doing
with a lower back problem.
Stretch your hamstrings. They attach to your pelvis, and when we sit for so long or sitting like this, our hamstrings just get tighter and tighter and tighter. And when they're tight, they don't let your pelvis move, so we put a lot more stress on our low back. Probably one of the, maybe the most popular exercise to give out for chronic low back pain is a hamstring stretch. It's just so tight all the time.
And what does the hamstring stretch look like?
So the hamstring stretch, you know, there's multiple versions. There's a simple sit and reach hamstring stretch where, you know, your leg is up on your bed and you keep your back straight and you're leaning forward just till you feel the stretch back here. Okay, and then another common one we will use, I'm going to grab a prop for us here.
Okay,
Whoops.
That's no problem. And is it something that I have at home?
Yes, it'll be something so simple. Yes, typically when we give people things to do at home, we have to make it easy, you know, or else it's hard to follow. So, you know, a belt over the foot.
Oh, like a bathrobe belt or something like that.
Yes, this is actually an old karate belt, but
okay.
Yes, it works just fine.
And so what are you doing?
So I'm just pulling up until I feel a stretch here behind the thigh, and I typically want to hold this for 30 seconds at a time. And we just, you know, and it doesn't take a long time. You do 3 or 4 on each side, and that's how you stretch your hamstrings out.
And that connects to your...
That connects right to your pelvis.
Okay.
And that's how you make the difference there, because that allows your pelvis to roll when you need it to do. Every time you reach and stoop for things, you can maneuver and have your pelvis be part of the equation without putting extra stress on your low back.
Is there another exercise that might be key, just something somebody can have in their toolbox?
Yeah, so, you know, we like to work a lot with resistance bands, and, you know, in trying to keep your core strong, you know, we like to do what's called an exercise called a Palloff press, but it does require a band, you know, to work with at home.
But they're cheap. Like, you can get them off Amazon.
They're everywhere, yes.
They're super cheap.
If you ordered one today, a drone will bring it tomorrow. So all it takes is some band that's, you know, kind of tucked into your door. Just, I tell everybody, tie a knot in the middle of it, shut the door, the knot will hold it in place for you.
Okay.
And then you're just here, and all you do is you're tight in the middle, you extend your arms out, you hold for 10 seconds, and then you just bring it back to your chest here. And all you're doing is fighting the rotation. You'll feel your core.
Oh, because it wants to go back.
Yes, it wants to pull you back.
So I want to
start
pull here. So there's some tension, right?
Yep. So you start here. Hands
like this?
In there. Yep.
Okay.
And then as you, again, tighten here, feet are shoulder width apart, and then you extend out.
Because it wants to do that and go back that way.
So you'll feel that there, yeah?
Okay.
So,
and so what does that do?
So the core strength is super, super key. Everything, the middle is your foundation. You know, everything you do in the middle is going to, it affects everything you do with your arms. So, you know, if you're weak in the middle, it's just you have a crumbly foundation, it's going to make it harder to do things that you do every day, whether it's, I don't care if you're emptying the dishwasher, you know, moving clothes, the laundry from washer to dryer. All of the everyday activities require the core to be the foundation so you can move and do things in life.
And this is really, like, I feel it, and it's so simple.
And it's so simple. It is so simple.
So tell me more. Give me some more core tricks. I want some more core, just at least one more.
The more, you know, again, the other easy thing to do is just, you could easily do a plank, requires no assistance or no equipment at all.
A plank.
And so you can literally start on your knees here. You could start
next to you.
In a forearm position. You know, you could be full arm.
Okay.
And you're just here, and it requires abdominals and low back to hold yourself up. Or you could be in this position in the forearm plank. I like this one better. Shorter lever arm. And then you're here. This actually works the core a little bit more.
Okay, so how long do we hold this
for?
So
I usually tell everybody, if you've never done a plank before, I usually start at 10 seconds.
Okay.
I try to tell everybody, work your way up to 30 seconds.
Okay.
And it works really good.
And then you do that how many times?
I wouldn't do it more than 3 times. I think that's plenty.
3 times in a sitting?
Yes, in a sitting.
And then how many times during the day?
So that just once.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all it takes is once. Yeah.
And that's to help strengthen the core.
Your core. Yeah, if you want to protect your low back. Yeah, if you stretched your hamstrings and did some core work, 3 times a week, your back would thank you for it.
Wow.
So very simple.
That is awesome. Okay, I got more.
All right, good.
Hold on. Okay, core. That was one of my questions. what are the best stretches to improve flexibility? Because I don't realize how not flexible I am until I try to get something that has fallen behind the dryer, and I'm like, oh.
Yeah, so it requires, most of that requires hip mobility, so, as you're stooping, squatting, doing all of those things, your hips have to be in good shape to move, but again, simple things that you can do for that.
Okay.
One of my favorites is a figure 4 stretch, is you're laying here. And it's funny, don't tell anybody, I do this in church, just sitting.
In church?
So, but if you're here and you just gently push down on this knee, you'll feel the stretch in this hip.
Oh.
And again, I just like to hold those for 30 seconds at a time. And then you just switch sides. And my left one is always tighter than my right, so that's what I work on at church.
And so you hold that for
30 seconds, yeah.
Okay. And how many times do you do that?
Again, if to make a length change, you got to hold it for 30 seconds. You just have to do it 3 times. Okay. So then your body will start to respond, and you'll start to notice, like, wow, I can do this better. This is easier. And it really, especially as we get tighter, people notice it gets harder. This makes it easier to don and doff footwear. You can, get to your feet easier. So it just definitely makes life simpler.
Yeah, I used to be able to just bend over and tie my shoes, and now I'm finding I'm sitting and tying
I know,
my shoes.
That's one of the things that when somebody comes in with a hip problem, that's one thing I ask is how do you put your shoes on? And they always say, well, I used to be able to do it this way. Yeah. Now I have to, feet on the floor, they lean over, but again, eventually you do that, your back will start to hurt you, So.
And so then we got to go back to the back exercises.
Right. So again.
All right. More questions. Let's see. How can I improve my balance and prevent falls?
So
I'm coming back to my original spot. Come on back here. No, because I know there's people working out back there, and they're like, could you go somewhere else?
Nobody, you can't prevent everything, but balance, just like anything else, can be improved upon, and so depending on the severity of the deficit, and a lot of times it comes with age. We lose flexibility. Things once we get past the age of 50, but the parts are just more brittle. That's just the way God made us. So depending on the amount or the deficit that they have, we start with simple things that are, we start with feet together and arms out. In training again, 20 to 30 seconds at a time in a safe area. I tell everybody put a chair or something on the side of you that you can grab as you need to. We bring them into a tandem stance, like this, if they start to progress and as they get better. And then obviously we work our way to a single leg one. And then once you start here, if you continue to advance and get better, obviously we start to close your eyes, you lose your sense of vertical, becomes much more difficult. So try it.
What? Try it.
Yeah, stand on one leg and close your eyes.
Stand on one leg and close my eyes.
Yes.
Yeah, it's much more difficult because
you lose your sense of vertical.
Yeah.
So, like I said, a great challenge where now you're forced to use what you feel through your feet and the movement in your hips, your hip strategy, to maintain your balance.
I love the idea of making sure something's there.
Yes, you got to make sure you have something to grab onto.
So, and before we got started, you also brought up something that you said is kind of rampant. You said ACLs.
So
where are they, first of all?
So again, if you circle all the way back to my passion being the high school athlete, one of the things that I noticed very early in my career was, as we were working with sports teams in high schools, is that we saw a crazy number of female athletes with ACL tears, and they were the star players. They weren't the clumsier athletic, people, and so I just kind of piqued my interest, very young therapist time for me, and I started to investigate that, and you start to realize that ACL tears in women happen 6 to 8 more times than men.
Really?
And there are certain things that are inherent to women that make them more susceptible to them. Some of them are what we call modifiable risk factors, and some of them are not. Some of them are just the way God makes women. The different hormones that are released at different times for them, the size of their pelvis, the size of their femoral notch, different things. We can't change that, but there are other things, hamstring weakness, the way they jump and land. We can correct all those things that help decrease the risk, but it's definitely an epidemic that nobody really talks about, because it becomes, it's a big surgery. There's a huge financial commitment on the side of the parents with insurance and paying their deductible and paying for surgery centers and all the therapy that's needed. It's a time commitment, getting them here 2 and 3 times a week for sometimes 6 to 9 months.
Wow.
It's certainly, there's a mental component. These poor kids who've had their whole lives wrapped around their sport, all of a sudden they're out of it for that long, so we have to kind of coach that too, so it's definitely something that's, I've been passionate about for a long time.
So, and for people who don't know where the ACL is.
So the ACL is a ligament in your knee. If you were able to remove your kneecap and lift it away, you would see 2 ligaments that kind of crisscross like so. The anterior cruciate ligament, the ACL, is the one in the front, and that's injured most commonly. It's really most commonly a non-contact injury. Typically they stick their foot in the ground and try to change directions, and that's when they will tear their ACL.
Now, are there exercises to do to prevent something like that, or are there not?
So no, there is. You can lower your risk factor. There are studies that show if you go through certain programs. One program that I'm very fond of is called Sports Metrics. It's an off-season kind of training program. It's typically 6 weeks long, and you work on all the modifiable risk factors from for whatever reason, God made women with weaker hamstrings than men. Those help protect the knee and the ACL in particular. So we work on strengthening those. We work on jumping and landing mechanics, so to make sure their bodies are trained to jump in a way that puts them at less risk. Women tend to jump and land in this more of a knock-kneed position. And they call it a valgus position, and that is unfortunately biomechanically putting them at risk. So we correct that. So sometimes there's some hip weakness that goes along with that.
Wow.
So there's a whole series of progressions that go through this program, and
Gosh, I had no idea.
it's all out there.
Unbelievable. Okay, so. And this will be the last one, because I think I'm going to come back and just go over more and more of these questions.
I would love to.
These are all things that people can.
I would love to be part of that.
Right?
Yeah. Yes.
So chronic pain, for example, at the base of my neck, I have been told that I have arthritis and that everything is trying to fuse together.
Okay.
So literally every morning, I do exercises for my neck.
Good for you. That's awesome.
Well,
that's what you should do.
because I don't want to be stiff all day long.
Yes.
And I don't like to do it. But are there things for chronic pain? Is the neck a common one, or what other body part?
So the neck is so it's like depending on the month, the low back, the knee, and the neck are they kind of just flip flop, which is more prevalent in our practice, in our offices, and so again, a lot of people who have more sedentary jobs, if they're computer based, they do wind up with some neck and upper back problems, like that. And again, depending on what it is, if it sounds like you have a degenerative disc issue and some osteoarthritis there are certain things. One of the things that pops in my head first would be whether you would benefit from some sort of home traction unit, something that, because basically your problem is this, the discs become degenerative, they shrink in height, the vertebrae get closer together, that's how the arthritis sets in. So doing something at home to reverse that process, so something that basically kind of pulls you a long ways, and almost like it's something trying to make you taller, but that's how taking some pressure off of that disc and doing that, 1 to 2 times a day for short periods of time, over a period of, 6 or 8 weeks, I would wonder how that would do for you, kind of thing. So.
And at my desk while I'm working, what kind of neck exercises would you?
So I always tell everybody,
He's like, oh yeah, we talk about this all the time.
You have to stay moving. It's again, everything's forward, right? Everything is forward. So that lends itself to some rounded shoulders and some poor posture. We all kind of get lazy with our posture. So I tell everybody, if you can set something on your phone for every 15 minutes, just stop and do a few, we call them scapular retractions, where you're just squeezing your shoulder blades together for about a 5 count, and do just like 5 reps of that, just again to break up the monotony of being here for minutes at a time.
Yeah.
So,
oh my gosh, this is all so helpful. Is there any other big ticket item that you think people could really use and take away from the expertise that you have?
Don't be afraid to ask for the things that are going to make your work ergonomic setup better. I see too many people who like, oh, my company will never get me a pull-out drawer for my keyboard. They're $30. Like, if your employer can't do that for you and they're asking you to, I don't know why you would ask somebody to do a job and then not give them what they need to be successful, right? It's not unreasonable. So I feel like, they're afraid to ask for these things, and you have to pay attention, or else no one's going to know that you have to pay attention to the details.
Say something and don't be afraid to ask.
Yes, for sure.
I love it. Allen Weiss, thank you so much.
This was awesome that you came here. I'm so glad.
Can I come back?
100%. 100%.
Awesome.
So,
Thank
as long as you don't need me. This is a much better visit.
Thank you.
All right.